Mars would be the dude in the watering hole getting drunk on whiskey and wanting to fight.
Mm-hmm.
That's what Mars does. So
Yes.
I understand
Mars,
astrology now.
Welcome to Astro Bros. My name is Nick. With me is Troy and Mike. And boys, how you doing?
doing great. It's Father's Day, and
Happy Father's Day, Mike.
Happy
thank you.
Father's Day.
My day started with my eldest son making me fried eggs, and that was pretty great. He did a good job.
Nice. That's awesome.
Makes
How
me
old is?
happy. I hope soon you guys have a day like that in your own lives because it's great. So
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, that's the goal right there. I remember making breakfast for my parents on Mother's and Father's Day too, and like that's awesome. If you don't mind saying, how old is your son who made you food?
my eldest Kelvin is 11 years
Nice.
old.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah. No, that's the goal right there. You know, you make little human resources, as they say on the No Agenda podcast, and yeah, exactly.
True.
You know, put them to work, and you know that's the best is if they make you breakfast. You know, that's awesome. So, well, I'm glad. Happy Father's Day, man. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, boys, welcome. Let's like get into it. Let's talk some astrology. Let's talk some life. Let's talk some everything. So, yeah, like Troy, how you doing, man? Like how's life with you?
Life's been interesting this week, and I'm sure you guys will tell me all about it in the stars. But yeah, I just I was a little bit behind on sleep and just kind of like a little bit of stuff going on, and it just kind of like I took most of the week pretty chill and just kind of like just did the bare minimum of stuff that I needed to keep going on work, and slept a bunch, and just trying to find that whole like, because I'd just been working a little bit too much and trying to find that work-life balance. So getting back more into my creative side and finding ways to streamline my workflow so that I can do it better, but also like, you know, right on time and effective.
Yeah. No, that's good.
Very
That's
coherent.
Yeah, no, it makes sense, and that's good. I mean, you got to do that sometimes. Everyone needs to take time to like take time for yourself and you know, adjust and figure out your needs. Because yeah, you could just power through, but then you're gonna burn yourself out and stuff. So good for you for doing that. I mean that. Like, yeah. And I hope you're doing better now. I hope that things have gotten better and you're feeling a little better and you've got that work-life balance figured out. But
Yep, a lot of sleep. I took 2 naps today. I got
shit,
in the hot tub twice.
Oh, Neptune must be doing something for you. I wonder, I got to look exactly what degree your Mercury is, but it must be hitting your Mercury or something because hot damn. Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
good.
well, the mercury in the
Keeping
hot
him in
tub was
dreams.
at 101, so if that
Ooh.
helps.
The
Oh, that
Mercury
Mercury.
outside in Oregon was 101. Jesus.
No, in the hot tub.
Oh, I didn't hear the hot tub part. I was like thinking Oregon is really having trouble and under the baleful gaze of the sun. I didn't
Not in
realize you were talking
Oregon,
about
but in my organs, yeah.
Oregon.
Oh, or Oregon's
Oh,
Oregon.
nice, in your organs. Nice.
And he's starting out with the pun. Fuck yeah, let's
He's
go.
going straight from the beginning.
Ooh. Who says you have to pronounce things correctly all the time?
No.
Still communicate.
Yeah.
What about your week, Nick?
Oh, my week has been great. I'm fucking on cloud nine, baby. Shout out to Amber, by the way. Let's see. Yeah. It's been great. It's been fucking great. I mean, you know, all my Libra stuff. I have Libra Moon and Libra Rising, and like maybe I'm just always looking for my partner, but like it's wild to like actually find someone who's fucking amazing. Yeah, so it's good. It's been really good.
Cheers.
So cheers. Thank you. Cheers. I'll definitely cheers to that. And yeah, like yeah, it's something different. I'll tell you that much, and something that I've never experienced. So it's good, really good. But yeah, I'm a happy boy, and yeah.
Well, it's a
I don't know
Libra
what else.
moon tonight. It's a
Yeah.
Libra moon right now.
Yes, and yes.
What does that mean for us?
Well, Libra is an air sign. It's the sign of relationships. It's the scales. The scales are always balancing truth versus beauty. That's like the basic two things. So sometimes you can't really say the full truth because it will mess up the vibe, right?
Yeah,
And
well said.
yeah, you just gotta you try to flow with things. So Libra is about meeting other people halfway, like giving people space to be themselves, helping to coax opinions and ideas out of people. And Libra loves that because Libra gets to understand more about themselves through interacting with others. That is the basic energy of Libra. It's basically the sign of the other. Whereas Aries, like you, Troy, is the sign of the self. Libra is your opposite. It's the sign of the other and other people around you, you know? It's like
Yeah.
self versus other. And Libra sometimes tries to find themselves through others, through relationship, right?
Yeah.
That is the energy. And I've been noticing relationships are really spicy this weekend. That's the main thing that I've noticed happening
Yeah.
out in the world.
Spicy good and spicy bad. I totally get what you're
Yeah.
saying. And I just want to jump in because it's like Libra rule, like really Libra is the sign, like the diplomat of the zodiac, where they can see both sides and they try to like in the negative, they can try to be too diplomatic in some ways and try to be like, smooth the waters between all groups. But there's a super strong value in that because you have both like if you have like two Aries, they're going to fight and they're going to butt heads until there's one winner. Whereas Libra is going to try to say, okay, how can we find some compromise? How can we find some balance between? Because they naturally want to see both sides. And again, it's just Libra placements, but they want to see both sides. They want to be able to at least try to. It's not always like they don't always agree with one side more than the other. It's not that they're completely like that way, but they at least put in the effort to at least try to see both sides to things. And yeah, it's like he was saying, it's an air sign, and so it's very much more about the communication, the mental sphere, versus like whereas Taurus is also kind of a Venus ruled sign, just like Libra is. It's more about the things that make us feel good and the pleasure, which we talked about last week. But now we're moving into the air, which is about communication, about the mental sphere. So yeah, and communication is a huge part of that, and also being able to then, like I said, hear someone out, I guess is one way to put it. And like, whereas an Aries, and you need both. You need that strong opinion of an Aries, and that just like, no, I'm correct, blah, 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 like fight me on it. A Libra is going to be like, okay, let's take a step back and look at the both sides. So it also, it's why in a way, because it's about the other, is why it also in a way rules relationships in the seventh house, especially. And, we can talk about that, but like, yeah, it's, we do project out, or we look for the things that we feel missing in ourselves. And there's a lot of negatives to that because it can lead to like a feeling like you lose yourself in the other person. But there is also a healthy way of doing relationships. And so it's not just that, it's also you can find that balance with another person. And Libra doesn't matter what part, like whether it's Venus or the rising sign or moon or sun or anything, they value finding their partner and their person because that kind of, it completes them and it lets them to then be themselves fully. Just like, a Cancer might need that emotional security or whatever.
Mhm.
That for a Libra archetype, they want the other in their life in some way. And so they're always looking for that. And then to one more point is that can also be replaced by things like drugs or if they don't have that in themselves, they're going to look for it in another way. So like a lot of people who have like Libra rising, for example, might become addicted to drugs because they don't have that. And so they're basically trying to fill that hole or like to find that to make them complete, so to speak. So anyways, but it's an interesting one. And yeah, it's interesting how it also is about how people perceive other people too. And that's more the seventh house, but yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any feedback on that, Troy?
I'm
Did you
just
catch
trying to
any of it?
absorb it at this point.
Okay.
I'm a very auditory person, so it's just like I'm just absorbing, but it's hard for me to still engage with a lot of this language. So,
Well, let me just
because it just
simplify it.
because you're
Oh, go
just
ahead.
like, oh, you're like, hey, let me give you an example, and then it's just a whole bunch of random examples to me,
Well,
so it's just hard for me to thread all this stuff together, in, but I'm learning.
Do, do you understand the basic polarity of self versus other, though? Like
exactly.
I
Aries
mean,
being self and then Libra being other?
I get the concept philosophically. I don't get how it corresponds necessarily onto the zodiac and on a personal level. Like how does that actually, I mean, what does that mean?
What does the other mean?
What I mean, I know what the other
You're
means.
asking an Aries what the other means. Come on. No, just kidding. I'm kidding, Troy. I love you, man.
No, I mean,
I assume they exist. I mean, it makes sense.
philosophically, I understand these concepts, you know, and spiritually, but it's just how they correspond to these certain traits of being like, okay, well, how would that correspond, you know, in their different placements and have those influences? That what are you more focused on yourself, or you just can't understand the other? So you're just saying Aries people are just autistic and just, you know, don't understand how other people work?
I mean, let
We're
me
not
jump
saying
in
that
real
out
quick.
loud.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, I've always thought that the sign of Aries rules autism, which again, I'm no fucking expert, but I've always thought that because in a way it does have similar archetypal qualities, but it's really, yeah, it's about everyone has to focus on themselves and be themselves, and they have their own needs and all that stuff. That's the Aries in them. And then there's also, you have to, like, with other people, like, you have to, you know, make concessions. You have to, you know, you have to meet people halfway at least. And that's the Libra archetype, where, you know, you could be by yourself forever and then you can do exactly what you want and you don't have to deal with people and their needs at all. But then you're also going to be quote unquote alone. Whereas the Libra archetype says, well, you need to at least take into consideration other people. And it's like he said, like Mike said, it's self versus other. And so how people who have a lot of Aries in their chart are going to be more focused on self, and that's totally fine. That's how it works. But it doesn't mean that they don't want to be alone or not have a partner. It just means that to incorporate the other energy of the Libra energy, which basically is like, you know, if someone comes to you and says like, you know, this bothers me, blah, 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 like in our relationship, how do you react? That's the question. And so do you react, well, oh, that's stupid, I don't agree with you? That's backing away from trying to make that compromise. Like Libra is all about compromise. And you know, in a especially in a romantic relationship, it can be with friends too. It's not just romantic, it's just with other people in general. But you do have to compromise on some level, like, or you know, you're not, I mean, that's what can create a lot of problems in relationships, is like the lack of that compromise, the lack of seeing what the other person is trying to say and trying to like find some kind of balance between, you know, their needs and your needs. And so it's that energy. And then going into the seventh house, which is, you know, ruled by Libra, like in the chart, the seventh house is, it's where we project what we want in another person. And you know, and projection is probably the wrong word, but it's just, it shows what we want in another person. And it can be projection, but it means that like, it also shows, once we kind of learn those things in ourselves, we can also find that person, I guess.
I think it's easier to pull people towards you the more self-actualized you are, right? You'll draw the right kind of people if you keep working on yourself. So you've got to work on both sides of that polarity. You can't just always try to people please, that because that's a negative of Libra, is like, instead of pushing forward their own ideas or their own thoughts, they'll step back and kind of pretend that they don't have any just to play peacemaker sometimes. But an Aries will not necessarily give a shit about how anybody else is feeling in a situation if they're in the mode of wanting to express what's in their inner being. And that causes often conflict, you know? I'm going to give like one quick example of Libraing this weekend. So
Please.
in astrology shitposting only, all the
Shout
fixed
out.
signs for some reason were mad at each other this weekend. And it was almost all fixed signs, and half of them had cardinal moons. So it was like cardinal moons that weren't Libra moons. So everybody was mad at each other. Tons of people that were triggered. I didn't think you were one of these people that got caught up in it as much, just a little bit.
Just a little.
But everybody got caught up into it because everybody wanted to be right, you know? So it was like nobody could see what the other people's points were. It all started basically from somebody posted their kid, you know, and it was a picture of their kid, and one of the chat members said gay or something about the kid, you know. Hopefully this is far enough in that I can say that.
Yeah, you're
and
fine.
They took it bad. It was like a graduation picture of their kid. They were feeling like a certain kind of way about it, celebratory, and then it felt like somebody just shat on their good time, you know, on their sharing themselves. And then there was just tons of shit that poured out from that, where it got messy all over the place. Everybody in the chat was arguing. So the Libra part of me, I finally came in and described like how people were feeling, like where the root of the pain was, I guess, where all the discord had started from, and then basically told people to shut up. And that was like maybe that's because I have Aries rising. I just didn't want to see everybody in the chat like hate each other and a bunch of big splits and schisms happen, because I've seen that happen before, and certainly not over something as dumb as that.
Yeah.
So that is kind of the Libra job, is to go in and make everybody equally unhappy. That is actually what diplomacy is. It's making sure that everybody is unhappy a little bit, but equally unhappy, so that you can move on, and it can be done.
Yeah.
So that's why I did this Libra Moon, and it was annoying. Here ends my lesson.
No, you're 100% right. And that's the job of Libra, because if we didn't have Libra in the world, that archetype, I mean, we would never be able to come to any kind of consensus or agreement. And that's that energy. So just think about it like abstractly, Troy. It's like, it's just, you have to like think about, again, the diplomats, which is a cliche of Libra, but that's because it shows the qualities there. But it's like two diplomats from different countries come together, and they both have the needs of each country, the Aries stuff. And they want to come together and be like, how can we find common ground, or at least meet on some level? We're both not going to get everything we want, because that's compromise. That's how it works. But at least you can try to get to that point. And so what Mike was saying, it's like, instead of having certain people like feel like they're completely right and then everyone else is wrong, he basically pointed out all the stuff and said, like, you're all wrong on some level, but in a way, nobody can get everything they want. And so like the Libra archetype can point that out and say, like, here's what you're saying, here's what you're saying, here are your needs, here are your needs. Obviously, you're not going to agree, but where can we find at least common ground? And we don't even have to find common ground. We can at least go, it can be just like what you're saying, like, you're all wrong or you're all bad, but that's okay. Like, but it's not necessarily just about like everyone gets what they want, because that's just not possible in this world. Like, it's
never happens.
Yeah, exactly. But Libra can point that out and at least try to like be like, hey, they can, because they have that ability to see. They have the ability to put themselves in someone else's shoes, see their opinion. Again, not always agree with it, but it takes putting yourself in someone else's shoes to at least hear what they're saying. And so that's that archetype, versus the archetype of Aries, the opposite sign, which is, I just want what I want. I believe what I want. I'm going to fight for that. I don't give a shit what the other person thinks. And so the blending of those two are just opposing polarities in people. And we see this happen in the world all the time. I mean, one person that's where a lot of fights come from, and there's value again in fights, but ultimately you have to come to some diplomatic consensus. And again, why Libra is the cliche diplomat. I mean, that's a very cliche archetype of Libra, is they're able to balance what, like I was saying earlier, two nations might need. Like, they have very different needs, but they can at least come to some consensus. It doesn't have to be like the ultimate consensus, but at least it's something. So, I mean, Troy, like in your relationships, Troy, like, speak, like, especially about relationships, like, do you have to concede sometimes, or do you just push for what you want all the time? You know what I'm saying? Like, if like, say you're with someone, or you're like even a friend, like, yeah, they have their needs, and sometimes do you sacrifice, or not sacrifice, because that can be the negative of Libra, but do you at least put yourself in their shoes and balance out your needs and what you want in the moment, versus maybe if they're expressing something that you don't agree with, but you can go, okay, I'm going to try to at least hear them out. At least that's like the bare minimum. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, the way I was grown up, I didn't have much of my own opinions, and I always had to kind of go to what everybody else. And so, like, a lot of my issues revolve much more around people pleasing. Like, that's one reason I got into sales. I can read people and I'm like, oh, I'm making people uncomfortable. I should tread softer. And I've just I've learned to turn it into a skill, you know?
But that's Libra. Like, that's the Libra archetype, though, is you basically, what you said was, I'm making people uncomfortable, I'm going to tread softer. The ability to see and feel what the other person is like if someone feels uncomfortable, then you're able to at least tap into that. So again, that you understand the archetype then, or the energy. So anyways, continue. I just wanted to jump in and emphasize that.
I mean, it made me feel more that like, maybe I don't know, when I don't feel that I can work with people, I feel that I'm all on my own, you know? So there is that as well, but it's yeah, there is a hard it's a hard job finding that balance, because a lot of the time I feel that like I've just been left alone to figure out how to do stuff on my own. Like, I've done carpentry stuff and lots of stuff where it's a 2 or 3 man job, and I'm just like, all right, well, I just need a couple clamps, and then I don't need anybody to hold anything up, you know?
Yeah. Well,
Little
yeah.
things like
Oh,
there's a lot of
go ahead.
things like that where it's just I've my experience has taught me to both rely on myself, but also that I can't completely rely on myself for certain things, that I have to rely on other people, and that's part of what makes us human.
Hmm.
It's like part of what makes us human is not, I mean, you can't just take a child and like be like, oh, he's gonna gestate in this tube and then go onto this like floating space station and gets to be all alone, but all of his needs are met by a hologram or whatever, but has no human touch. Like, could you really consider that thing that human, because they just would lack so much of the brain functionality of actually looking at people in the eyes and doing stuff and meeting new people, and that, it's just
Well,
all that's required.
a lot of people are dealing with that kind of isolation right now. They don't even have to go to a space station. Um, the only real interaction that they have with people is like through a screen. Like this is
Hmm.
a real problem nowadays, where people become more and more isolated, more and more caught up in like some internet subculture, um,
Not
and
this one. This is
and
healthy
less
for
having
you.
interactions with real people in real life. That's like the
Yeah.
neat shit, right? No employment, education, or
Oh
training,
yeah.
I think.
Yeah. 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 The
Well, but
needs.
the thing is I'm talking also about like brain development too. If
Yeah.
you don't have certain things exposed to the way that your brain's developing, your brain isn't going to develop those capabilities, you know? And same thing with your immune system. There's certain things about the body that it's calibrating in childhood to, regulate what's the outside world, and also during pregnancy is getting all these signals about, what genes are getting turned on and off to be more ready to make a better life.
No, absolutely. And again, like in childhood, like, yeah, we first develop other parts of ourselves first, like the basic needs getting met. But then as you move into like, yeah, like when you're on the playground with other kids, you're learning how to relate to other people. And like obviously everyone has a different experience of that. And so it's like, but that's part of it. It's like depending on our own, unique personalities, we're going to be either more outgoing or more introverted, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
But that's still, yeah, exactly with the development, what you're talking about, that we learn the quote Libra archetype through our interactions. And then, our first crushes and like first grade, where it's obviously just silly, but you're still learning those feelings and being like, oh, this other person is, I'm drawn to them. And like then obviously as we get older, then you basically cycle through it again and again. And but again, that initial, like, yeah, there is that importance of like, yeah, learning about obviously the basic needs like safety and security, but then if you build then to it then goes to me and the other eventually. And so it's about and the other again. And so yeah, we learn that through again our interactions with people. So like, yeah, like if you're just alone on an island or alone in space, you're not going to have to learn that because there's no other people to interact with. And so yeah, it's going to really focus you down just on yourself, your own needs, which there's nothing bad about that, but it's we live in a world full of people and it's impossible to live without interacting with other people. And so at least on the base level, it's important to at least learn how to just interact with people on a very basic level, like in being quote unquote cordial with like the grocery store clerk or whatever. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
you can just ignore them completely and that's fine too, but there's a value in like learning just to be like, hey, how you doing? Like, I mean, that's very basic Libra stuff. It might also be Gemini, but it's it's being aware of the other person. I think that's what it's about too, and not just focusing on just me. Like there's a wall in front of me, everything else is nothing. But instead, it's like breaking down that wall and saying like, okay, there's another person there. At least I'm gonna at least try to interact and at least see my, put myself in their shoes a little bit. So That's definitely the Libra part. And yeah, in child development, that's so important because otherwise you get like little monsters who are just little shitheads who like can't interact with people, and like, or if they do, they're just like, no, I want this, my toy, blah blah blah. It's like, okay, like, yeah, but it does happen. So
Yeah. So
yeah,
Aries are
but
toddlers is one of that's all I heard.
no, yeah,
They're
well,
infants, actually. Taurus is toddlers.
yeah, exactly.
Oh.
And it's not that all Aries
It's the
are
first sign.
toddlers. Yeah, exactly. It's think of it as a positive though. Like you are given the gift of being able to like discover your own life, because in like for adults like an Aries sun like yourself, it's you're almost given the opportunity to like be born and then create your own life, whereas like someone like another person might not have that opportunity. And so
Yeah.
Aries placements are very positive. It's not just that you're
Yeah.
a child or an infant, it's that think of it as the archetype of the infant and being able to be like, oh, I'm experiencing the world and I'm open to it, and like, oh, there's all this new stuff, and like, yeah, you can as an adult you can run with that mentality completely, and there's like that's a great thing, and it's also about discovering the self too. So and
Yeah, Aries sun is Aries sun is exalted. It's considered like the best sun sign objectively by astrologers over the course of time, because the sun just wants to express what it is, right? Like the sun wants to be what it is. As Aries, it's like there's no real film, there's no separation between what they project and who they are, what they're, because Aries is about like developing the ego. It's not even about having an ego. That's more of a Leo thing. Yeah. Aries is about developing who they are, developing a self, because it's only after you have a self that you can become selfless. It's only after you have a self that you can really give to others. It's like building up who you are so that you can be a gift to the world. And that's pretty cool. And Libra on the opposite side is in fall, right? It's like in considered the worst position for the sun. I personally like it because I'm partial, but it's considered the worst position for the sun because the sun doesn't want to have to think about what other people feel about every single situation, The sun just wants to be itself and enjoy life, right? It doesn't want to have to think about all these fucking stupid problems that everybody around them is having and having to deal with that as if it's really happening to themselves. And I think that that's one of the things that Libra gets pulled in to resolve issues between people quite often, and that's not actually that fun. Just to put it out there in the world, it actually sucks.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And that's why the sun is in fall there. It's like it's not what the sun wants to do. Everybody has a different chart. Mine, I've figured out a way to run with it, and it works fine for me. But it doesn't work fine for everybody. There's a lot of Libras out there that are desperately unhappy because they're constantly caught up in other people's bullshit.
Very well put. Yeah.
To put it simply.
No, very well put. And yeah, go ahead.
So are journalists Libras?
They can be,
I think
but
that connects with Gemini more.
Yeah.
Journalism connects with Gemini.
Oh, gossip and such.
Yeah, and just collecting. Well, you said and gossip and such, but like, yeah, Gemini is experiencing the world and collecting facts and trying to split the world into like, okay, this and this, this or this, this or this. So there is that shared understanding, but it's more about like the rational mind where we, it's like this versus this, okay, and then how can we figure out the truth or the answer there, and which is the opposite sign, Sag. But like for Libra, it's more about putting yourself in the other person's shoes, or at least trying to like see the other and finding that balance and compromise. So Gemini is a split sign, like it has the whole idea of like it being the twins, and like, but that's more the mind, the rational mind, and how we kind of experience our environment. So yeah, journalists can definitely be, I mean, you can have journalists be every sign, but and you might have a good Libra journalist who is able to like when they, or maybe even as an interviewer, because they're able to like really hear what the person they're interviewing is saying. And I just want to say two things for you, Troy, because you've studied the ego a lot, and you've also talked about how there's like a way to have a healthy ego, and that's a very much an Aries thing. Like that's a very valuable thing. Like there's a healthy version of the ego, and then there's obviously the egotistical negative sides of it. And as you move further into the zodiac, you get like, Capricorn and then Aquarius, and especially like Aquarius and Pisces, then you get really neurotic. Like, so there's a value in being able to not like you're not there. You don't have like, I mean, obviously it's the whole chart. It's not just your sun, but abstractly, Aries doesn't really deal with neuroticism very much because they're not there yet. You know what I'm saying? And so, but yeah, it's the whole chart though. So obviously other parts will, like you have, you know, Mercury and Pisces and stuff. So I'm not saying you're neurotic, but I'm just saying you may not identify fully with like, you know, just the Aries archetype. But, and then the other thing is, oh, but yeah, exactly. You understand the ego. And I know you've talked about that. We've talked about that before. And like, you understand like that there's a healthy ego. And like, that's like the ideal of Aries is to develop that healthy ego. So,
Well, good
Well
to
put.
know.
yeah.
That's something I've certainly been working on.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I just also, I was had a lot of examples of what not to be growing up, inside and outside the family. And so it was just one of those things, is like it was constantly trying to discover who I am and who can I be and what are the capabilities when there aren't good examples around to follow, because the only examples you had to follow were people who got like singular types of excellence, like a Michael Jordan or whatever,
Yeah.
did a great job on the basketball field, but basketball field, fuck me. Can't believe
I think they call it a court nowadays.
Yeah. What about the football
that.
court? Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, we get what you're saying,
That's
dog. You're
hilarious.
good. Yeah,
We
yeah, yeah. No,
understand.
yeah,
if we were popular enough, that would get clipped. Eventually.
clip it, clip it.
But,
No,
but it's still
go.
when you have a singular form of success that you're judging someone or viewing someone by, it's very easy to see them as a, like, but it's like, okay, well, I can go model his success of excellence, at least in that dimension, so it's like, you could be like, okay, well, I'm going to just practice more. And that was the whole Michael Jordan story, at least, you know, uh, and it's just hard when you just have a lot of these examples in societies that are so one dimensional, you know,
Yeah,
uh, and I think that's part of the idea of why so many people, uh, epitomize the idea of the Renaissance man, of someone who's well-rounded, and in today's society, I don't know, I wish that we would start appreciating that again, because so much of it's been watered down to the point where it's just like, oh, I'm going to go read an article here and an article there and listen to what the media says and then just repeat it and assume I'm smart, because they want to see this certain image of themselves rather than uh actually pursue, like, realizing that the pursuit of like multidisciplinary tract of education is that none of them are at a place of finality. Like, there's nothing we know to the point of any scientific endeavor, for example, that we know is completely figured everything out, you know? Uh, so there's always more to figure out. But if you know how to take the more or less the 80% of the accurate conclusions, or the ones that are closer to being the truth, out of all of them, you can put together a much more cohesive version of reality,
Yep.
rather than just trying to rely on one speciality or one expertise.
yeah,
And in today's world, especially with AI and all that other stuff, it's just we're reliant on being able to integrate information sets more than just being able to be a calculator.
oh yeah. And like with the Michael Jordan example, like I would argue that's more maybe, I mean, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, but like maybe more of the Capricorn archetype or something. Not again that Michael Jordan was a Capricorn. I think he was an Aquarius, but it's that idea of like that singular focus and climbing to the top in whatever field or whatever it is.
Yep.
And, there's again value in all the signs. And so there's value in that. But yeah, Troy, I hear what you're saying, because it's like, yeah, like the next sign is Aries. And so, yeah, it's like being able to just develop that self and whatever that is. And it can be like what you're saying, like it's having many different skills, and that gives you a sense of self-worth and confidence. And again, self-worth is more in the next sign, Taurus, but at least a sense of self and definition of self and like ego in that positive sense. And like,
Yeah.
I just want to throw out like my dad, like one of the things with an Aries sun, my dad is an Aries sun, and he had a very tough childhood. I mean, he had to basically struggle through that and figure out who he was, and he had to develop who he was, especially starting in a later part of life. Like, and so there's it's Aries is a fighter. Aries is like the warrior of the zodiac. Like they want to just fight. They want to just, and that fight can be for the self in the sense of like, I'm going to fight, even though I had this hard stuff, even though I had these things in my past, I'm going to fight and push and, focus and be and like define who I am. And that's again, like defining that individual self and that ego, the positive again. And so it's not easy. Like most Aries placements are going to have to learn to fight. And again, it's finding that balance, the other side, Libra, where when is it appropriate to fight and when is it maybe better to not fight, I guess, and be more diplomatic and more compromising. And so, but when we're talking about developing the self and the ego and the person who we are, yeah, there's definitely like a value in fighting for that and pushing for that. And it's not just like rainbows and fucking ponies and just like, oh yay, I'm just gonna magically be myself. No, you actually have to do the work, and you actually have to like, and especially in Aries, is gonna have to fight for that, and inside themselves and externally as well. So, but yeah, well, I think we've talked plenty about Libra archetype. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think we can move forward. Yeah, I know. Good. Do it. Let's go.
No,
go ahead.
I was re-getting my OLCC card and going through all these. Like, I used to like have to go to a Papa's Pizza. We'd sit down for 2 hours, listen to the lecture, fill out the little test, and then if you pass, you get your little thing. And it's like, okay, I'm gonna go sit down for like 2 hours and 2.5 hours and just go knock this thing out. I was there for like 3 hours, and it was just like the most boring stuff. And
what is OCC? Oh, Oregon Country Fair?
No.
Oh,
it's for liquor, and it was just
okay.
Oregon Liquor Control Commission. That's what he's talking about.
Okay.
Damn it, I forgot what I was gonna say now. I'm an Aries Pisces cusp.
Cusp don't exist.
So you're an Aries.
Just kidding. You're an Aries.
I'm not a fan of cusps. I mean, you're one or the other, but
I'm an Aries, but Pisces is cusping my balls.
Well, yeah, and you have Mercury in Pisces, so there's going to be that. Yeah, so that makes sense why maybe you.
I mean, I am 26 hours over the line, so I mean,
you are born when you're meant to be born, brother.
Well, it's just when people say they're a cusp and they're a week off, and I'm like, that is like, no,
is it like 23rd or 22nd?
Well, it's, I'm on the 22nd.
Okay.
In the morning of the 22nd.
Yeah.
So, but as far as I understand, the cusp.
I got married on that day.
Oh, look at that! Your birthday.
So I'll be able to remember your shit.
No, nice. Yeah, he's 86.
As Evanescence said, "Bring me to life."
Is that what they were?
Start with that, and then let's go to the next part.
All right. So let's move on. Do you want to talk about, or do you want to do explain astrology to Troy next, or do we want to do Mars and Taurus? I guess what's a better segue?
I think did you come with anything that you wanted to talk about, and then maybe we can move to Taurus after that?
Yeah.
Not particularly. I mean, I was thinking to possibly just talk about culture as a concept.
Yeah, we can talk about that.
Like,
that works for Neptune in the dice roll.
Yep.
Does it?
Yeah, I have my thoughts on that. Yeah,
I'm flying kind of blind here, so.
No, well, okay, let's do that. Let's talk about culture and what that means.
Doesn't tell me much, so I'm just kind of like.
Oh, you're good. Let's jump in and talk about like culture and like what defines culture, and especially what outer planets and how that works, and like how culture changes. And I think, depending on what type of culture we're talking about, whether we're talking about the actual things that happen literally and physically, or versus like what people value, which I think is the Neptune side of it, and like the narratives that culture picks up and goes with. Like a big thing, like if you look back at history, or like even just looking back like the past like 40 years, look at when the outer planets like Uranus, Neptune, Pluto changed signs. and you'll see shifts in culture at those times. And when they line up, it's even stronger. But obviously, it's a subtle thing because you have one planet might change, and then 5 years later, another planet might change. But you could still see the different the beats of culture. And like again, like just when we talked about last week about how like the past 10, 15 years has been a certain way, a certain focus, and a certain things are more emphasized in the same way like we're coming up to now with like Pluto and Aquarius, and then Neptune's going to move into Aries. Culture's
You
going
can
to
tell
shift.
it's shifting. You can tell
Yes.
we're right on the edge of
Yes.
a big cultural and maybe even civilizational shift for this one. It feels like it might be that big.
Yeah.
We'll
Do
see,
you
I
think
guess.
it's
I always tend to
is it
overstate how fast things are going to change, though.
I
Well,
mean, obviously
understandable.
this is coming with a shift of humanity and a shift of perception, but is it what kind of shift of perception do you think is happening right now according to the astrology?
Yeah, I would love to go for this one. So we're exiting the period of Pluto and Capricorn. And Pluto and Capricorn has showed us how rotten a lot of our institutions and political systems are. A lot of our the things that are supposed to kind of hold culture sacrosanct and keep our cultures going have become more and more detached from any utility and become more and more self-serving, more and more rotten. And that's what Pluto does, is it brings the rot in society to the surface in whatever sign it's ruling at the time, right? So Pluto and Capricorn brought the rot in our political system, because Capricorn rules the political system. It brought the rot to our institutions, like the big institutions. I mean, from schools to the Treasury, to the
Medical.
FBI, to the CIA.
Yeah.
I mean, all of these aspects have been showing themselves to be more and more rotten, more and more corrupt.
Mm-hmm.
So the reason that Pluto brings things to the surface is to either heal them through kind of cleansing fire, which is like why Pluto is not loved by very many people, because it sucks going through it, going through Pluto problems. But the fact is, more and more people across not just the US, but across the world are looking at their political system, looking at their institutions, realizing those things no longer serve the needs of the general public anymore. And maybe they haven't for a long time, but more and more people are becoming aware of how they've become corrupt. And that's the first step to healing, is awareness of the problem, and honestly looking at the problem. And I think that that's what the Pluto and Capricorn vibe has been. It's showing us the rod at the top. Pluto and Aquarius is going to be about trying to find the solution and hopefully not going down the same ways that we did before. Last time Pluto was in Aquarius, last time it moved from Capricorn to Aquarius, was right around the U.S. Civil War and not the U.S. Civil War, the U.S. Revolution and the French Revolution.
Mm-hmm.
Especially the French Revolution is like this master class in understanding like the negative impacts of revolution, right? You had a lot of people getting their heads chopped off for no particular reason, including some of the people that chopped, the last person's head off, going to the block pretty much right after him because the public opinion shifted. So Aquarius is about the whole. It's not just about the people at the top. It's about the mass of humanity. And the mass of humanity can be corrupt just like the elite can be corrupt, So I think that this move is going to be really powerful in a lot of ways. It's going to shake up a lot of things that need to be shaken up. And a lot of the stuff, when it gets shaken up, is going to crumble. But then we're not going to have even a rotting institution that's still kind of holding it together is maybe sometimes better than nothing, the empty space of what used to be there. And I think that this next shift is going to be about, well, what if this stuff breaks down? How do we deal with it? And we're going to have to come together and figure out kind of new solutions to it. That would be a very quick version of that shift.
So what is the next sign that Pluto is transitioning into, and when does that happen?
It's already in the process of it. It's already in Aquarius, but it's going to go one last time into Capricorn, probably in the next couple months. And that should be like the capstone on the U.S. Pluto return. Because when the U.S. was born, Pluto was in Capricorn. It's taken all these years for Pluto to get back to its position. So Pluto return tends to be a time of great change and disorder and kind of eruption in a country. And I can't help but notice that our country is in a very it's in a very precarious kind of position, both internationally
Yeah,
and domestically.
for sure. I hear that.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
And
Go ahead.
so
I'm
one thing
listening.
I wanted to just mention is like a little bit of like how I understand culture, just as to define the terms.
Yes.
It is a catch-all term. It is because it's literally saying culture is everything we do, you know. So it's kind of a cop-out term. So it's like, but it's in the whole nature versus nurture. We have to look at like who we are as a biological species, and you know, I like Brett Weinstein in this regard, that essentially that culture is a part of our biology, that like that culture is our ability to upload information beyond ourselves into the community, into the whole humanity sphere, as much as you're able to communicate and connect people, because that's part of what makes us human, is our ability to interact and learn from each other. So a lot of this is like even what we're doing here is how do we take our individual knowledge, weave it together to so that just the same way that like scientists would do, and you know, but people just naturally have done that forever. Hey, let's go compare our information sets and see how they line up and how they don't and how we can coordinate them. And because if you guys tell me there's a big bear or there's a ambush coming over
Bear.
the or there's a big danger, whatever it is, it's
Yeah.
like we know it's up there next time we go there because somebody told me about it. So next time I go there, I'm going to be prepared. So I get a benefit from other people's experience, you know? Um and so like so much of culture is how do we upload the good things to culture into the cultural layer of the humanity, you know?
Well,
And it's
okay.
also it but it's also like how we come together and how we solve problems. It's all the things that we learn all the way from the grade school of solving like of when, oh, we're playing tag and someone's not following the rules. Well, there's not an adult around to solve this for several minutes. So they have to solve this problem and deal with this problem. Even if the adult's coming in 10 minutes, they still have to deal with this problem for 10 minutes. How do they deal? You
Well,
know,
that's
when
Pluto and
someone's just not
Aquarius,
following the rule of law or the rule of the game or the everybody
and
else is
that's
agreeing
Pluto
on
and
the
Capricorn.
rules, you
Yeah.
know. Well, and also on a side note, that's where you get a Western. What do you get when nobody's following the rules? You know, like how do you respond? And like those are a lot of the things that like we got to do as cultural experiments and think things out. And so it's like part of what's going on right now, I think, in our culture is it's a lot of how we see the world, our worldview, but it's and it's also people are really oversaturated so that there's just too much information. We can't learn everything. We can't listen to everybody. So, and we have to kind of nurture our own reality. But how do we find that again, the balance of yourself and the other? And and then there's certain political ideologies that just default, oh, well, I'm going to just anytime I see any intellectual conundrum, I'm just going to say, oh, well, I'm just on the side of right and I'm going to help people, you know? And then there's other people who are just far too practical, you know, because they're just go, oh, I'm just going to do the thing that's always worked, you know? And
Yeah.
it gets them what they need in their version of interacting with reality. And we just now like in the left and the right, we it's like they have the fundamental things like Jonathan Haidt, you know, they have good fundamental moral values. They just prioritize certain ones other over other ones. And then the way that the media is working is it's only catering to one side or the other. Like you can look at ground news for that.
Okay.
That you
Can I
know,
jump in soon? Yeah, you're saying
yeah,
so
just
much, and there's so much to respond to. So just at some point, yeah, I mean, let me jump
yeah.
in.
But
Um,
I've just uh it's just the whole point is that like that's all of us on a humanity level that's existing, and it's like how do we balance ourselves between that big slice of the culture and how we make our slice in it. How do we upload to it? And like I think that's like the really important thing to think about, is because like we can affect other people with our action, but we can also affect people with our culture.
Yes, and culture is created by the individuals, and
Yep.
like that's where, so you know, if you look at like say like Pluto and Aquarius, for example, or Pluto and Capricorn, the Capricorn and especially the cardinal signs were hit stronger because there's the square and the oppositions and stuff. But those people might have been drawn more to participate in culture and to add to culture and to influence culture for negative and positives. And if we're talking about each individual, like, yeah, if you're like very unself-aware and you're very much just egotistical in a negative sense and just very much just self-absorbed, you're going to add that to culture, and you're going to, you know, want to just add what you believe, and that's, but then if people work on themselves and each individual, then they're going to be able to add, and that's the way to create a better culture. Is it starts with each individual, because culture is not some outside force. I mean, we talk about astrology as being some outside force, but it works through every individual human. It's not like it's some magical outside force that is forcing us to be a certain way. It comes out through people. Yeah. Yeah. Just, the gods of astrology. And like, yeah, but, and like, you know, so we talk about like with the media, the narratives that get pushed and like the collective cultural narratives, that could be Neptune. And so like, and then the things that come to the surface is Pluto, and then the different quick insights and changes that happen could be Uranus, where it's like, you know, like out of nowhere. Like, I mean, for example, like, you know, politically, like, you know, when Trump got elected in 2016, that was kind of out of nowhere in a way, because it completely disrupted the quote system. And so, and that makes sense because then Uranus was starting to square, or it wasn't square with Pluto. The rot was, and again, it's not trying to say one thing is better politically or other, but abstractly, it was a shock to the system, and the system freaked out and said, "Oh my God, this person, we can't have them." And so obviously then they created cultural narratives and and again, because it's in Pisces, maybe there's that emphasis on victimhood and being kind of like, you know, oh, we're, you know, the collective and we're all victims, or like the negatives of Pisces. There's obviously the positives that happen too, but again, it acts through people, though, to emphasize your point, because it's not some outside magical power. It's, you know, and so if we want to change culture, we have to
press through people. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And that can be each individual, and it can also be like institutions, like say like a media, like obviously everyone in like a certain media institution is going to be all on board in the same way, but like it really comes down to the individuals. But if you think about like the beginning of America, like after the revolution and a few years, you know, it took time for America to build. And that first initial part was it was during the Pluto and Aquarius transit, and people really were like pushing to kind of just live their own lives, be themselves, be more self-reliant and all these things. And like, that's not just Aquarius, but it's, again, it happens through people. And that's very much important, because there is not some like magical force that's like, I mean, you can believe that if you want, if it's a metaphor that works for you, but like, it's more about like, yeah, what do you contribute to the culture and how much can you influence the culture? And again, people are brought up and brought out, and that's why we see different, like someone might become popular and then their ideas later just become the norm. And again, that's how culture works, is like something becomes different and it starts to change culture and spreads to the quote masses, and then that just becomes the norm for people, and then something else happens and it brings that out. And so those are the things that really can help influence culture and stuff.
I've got a couple of things to say that kind of came up from that, if that's cool. That was the most Libra way to do it. I've got a couple things to say, if that's cool.
It's not cool, Mike. It's not. No, I'm just kidding.
It is kind of cool, but you know, people can feel however they want about it. So
I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. Oh, I love it.
I'm kidding. I'm just kidding too. So you were talking about Uranus and Trump, that being like a big Uranus moment, the election. Trump has a Sun conjunct Uranus, almost exact, I think, conjunct his North Node. So it's like literally like his guiding star, right? Him being himself, as disruptive and sometimes annoying as he is like really, he is himself. Like whatever else you want to say about him, Trump actually is being himself.
Oh, 100%.
So
I don't think he has
I
a
just
choice
wanted to
in
bring that
matter.
up. What?
I don't think he has
Huh?
much of a choice in that matter.
I think he's driven. There's also all this unconscious stuff happening in his 12th house. I'm not going to get into that. But we were talking about culture. I wanted to be a little bit of the Scorpio moon. I want to talk about the Scorpio moon, the more Scorpio aspect of culture. So you've got like think tanks that create like these cultural ideas and then push them down from above in a lot of ways. And many people experience reality through a consensus filter. Like the only reality they're allowed to kind of express or believe is the reality that everyone around them tells them is correct, right? So whatever media or whatever they're getting from the media gives them that box to live in, and most people live within a consensus framework. And that is exploited almost totally by people that have control over like the airwaves, over most of the stuff that gets to us. The big thing that's been challenging that is things like long form podcasts, and more and more people are tuning in to, instead of like these ideas that are being pushed down at you, these narratives that are being pushed down at you, they're listening to people discuss like bigger issues, which doesn't give them the answer. It doesn't give them that consensus filter. They have to work through it themselves. I mean, there are some podcasts that definitely are like um one person trying to push their cultural ideas on other people, but they're rarer now,
Ben
The ones that are
Shapiro.
really popular are the ones that are just people having a conversation. And I think that that's what's really shifted. I think that's shifted a lot of people outside of their normal kind of consensus reality boxes. And I think that actually has a big role to play in the Pluto and Aquarius transition, is less people are inhibited, more willing to say things that are going to freak out the fucking normies, so to speak, more likely to talk about things that you don't talk about in polite company, like a lot of those
Yeah.
rules were put down from the top and were just repeated over and over again until it became part of our culture. So there's a huge part of our culture that is absolutely artificial, that has nothing to do with what really is happening around us. It's this from the top constructed reality that we're all unfortunately living in, but more and more people are breaking away from that constructed reality and are causing ripples from doing it, from breaking away.
Yeah. Very well put. Yeah. Yeah.
That's all I'll say about that.
Okay.
Well, and it's like with a lot of this stuff is, I've said before, is convincing people on the problem. It requires a lot of information and a lot of patience, and it requires a lot of people to realize how many times they've been lied about so many things in their life.
Yeah.
But the solution's a lot easier, which is basically like respect people's autonomy, allow them to make decisions, try to build wealth and structure close to your health and close to your home, close to your, closer to you, and support the people around you more than the people further away from you,
Yeah.
because it's just like, that's where you have more control over. It's like, I could go give money to my roommate or to my friend who's close by, and I know where that I can see direct benefit of that, and not that I need it paid back to me as much as that, like, I see the benefit, and I can see that if my actions are getting what I want from them, because I can't control the outcome of my actions, but I can start to see, oh, where are my inputs giving me more of what I actually like to see in reality.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, on a cultural level, it's like it's like, how are we being an example, and how can we look to examples? Because it's like we end up learning things the hard way unless we have a good example to show us otherwise, and that's one thing that's nice about certain elements of I like watching podcasts and long form stuff, is you get to see people's full personalities and not just the one dimension of them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, and let me just jump in because I mean, what Mike said was about like the top down idea of trying to influence culture is very much a real thing. And like, in my opinion, that's a lot to do with like the Pluto archetype in terms of just like, I'm going to like, manipulate the culture and control the culture in that way and influence. I mean, and so, but the weird thing is, I even think that those people either they know astrology or they're still influenced by it. And so it's just funny that even though they tried to like, there was a lot of, especially in the first half of the Pluto and Capricorn times, no matter what, they couldn't keep that, they couldn't maintain that the things that they were trying to push. And I think that even they are influenced, like, even their narratives that they put on us and say like this is what we want should pay attention to, this is what we should ignore, this is what's good, this is what's bad. It's still because like the energy of Pluto, whatever you want to call that, was still more powerful because obviously there are things more powerful than the institutions and the people who think
Yeah.
they are gods in this world. And that influence, it allowed for the rot to still be seen by a lot of people, even though they tried desperately to not let it happen. And they really pushed back against that and like really tried to create, this is how it is, this is the right thing, this is like, and this is what's wrong. And so it's just interesting because yeah, as much as we like individuals and institutions and groups of people create the culture, but at the same time there's some level of influence. I mean, and again, it happens through people, but there's something more that, and we call it whatever we want. I mean, but there's like this natural flow, and I see it through astrology. If you like talk about the natural flow of how the planets move, it's something that's outside of our ultimate control. Like they're still gonna like Pluto and Capricorn is still gonna do its Pluto and Capricorn thing. It's gonna obviously be a complex mess of shit, but like it still was able to expose the rot in a lot of the institutions as much as they tried to clamp down and not let that happen. And so
Yeah,
there
for sure.
is like, yeah, so it'll be interesting to see when, yeah, with Pluto and Aquarius, especially as it moves fully into Aquarius after its final passage through Capricorn, like people really are fed up with stuff. And like, I mean, a lot of people anyways, not everyone, it's not the majority usually, but it doesn't need to be the majority, but it's,
No,
yeah,
certainly
yeah,
doesn't.
yeah. And, but yeah, exactly like what you're saying, Troy, these long form conversations, these real conversations, that's really what it comes down to. It's just like more real and not that like if you watch the news, it's just scripted, it's fake, it comes across fake. It's just like there's not that level of just like, okay, this is the real conversation we're having. This is the reality we see. It's more like, this is the reality we want you to believe. And so it's
Yes.
a very different energy, and people are really starting to notice that. Cause yeah, like a lot of the older generations still just go along with the narratives like hook, line, and sinker. They don't even question it. Like, Pluto, the Pluto and Leo generation, even the Pluto and Virgo generation, they really just go along with it. And again, it's not to criticize them necessarily, but it's more just we're seeing now, especially with Pluto then moving into Aquarius, which is opposite that Pluto and Leo. It's like there's
Yeah.
gonna be it's gonna be a very different energy. And like,
Well,
yeah.
most of
Yeah.
the boomers, I mean, not to be too put too fine a point of it, but most of the boomers are going to die during Pluto and Aquarius, right? Like
Yes. That's just the
what's
reality.
going to happen.
Yeah.
That's just reality. So the Pluto opposition, not everybody gets that, right? Because it's a 230 something year cycle. So the fact that it moved pretty fast between Pluto and Leo and Pluto and Aquarius, that doesn't happen for very many generations. Most
Mm-mm.
generations don't get to see the other side.
Yes.
So that it's going to be interesting. I think that one of the things that I really love about the Pluto and Leo generation is their competency. And the problem with them, in some ways, is they didn't pass on that competency. They kind of hoarded it like dragon's gold a little bit. And instead of like
Yes.
passing the information and the ability to do things onto the next generation, they kind of sat in their silos because they were, they just wanted the power and the respect that came from it. And I think that's like the dark side of the Pluto and Leo kind of boomer energy.
Yes.
Pluto and Virgo boomers are different, actually, and I would say that they're
Nice. Okay.
they're
That makes me
better in
happy to
some
hear.
way. More Pluto and Virgo boomers are kind of awake.
Good. That's good to hear.
Yeah, I would say.
No, that's awesome.
But I just wanted to say that I do love a lot of the boomers. I think that they're competent in like what they do.
Oh
Like a
yeah.
lot of them could fix their cars or fix their houses. I would say that like the younger generations are less likely to be able to do those things because and this is partially Pluto and Leo's fault because they didn't pass down their knowledge. They were too self-focused and didn't pass down important knowledge that becomes part of the culture. Men being able to change their own oil, men being able to change their tire, fix parts in their house, you know?
I mean, and that's more on the individual level that like people can see as examples in their own lives, but that also goes into all of our manufacturing, steel production. Like we used to be the biggest steel exporter, like, you know, in the 70s and 80s, like not even that long ago. And like now we can't even produce the same level of steel and such that we did before. So
for real.
It's I mean, there's a lot of things, and obviously not every way that we did everything back then was right, but there was still a lot of things that we were doing back then where we were actually like we were way more self-sufficient, you know? And it's the whole thing is just like, you know, it's like I want to go take care of my family and my friends and myself first because that's where my locus of control is, you know? And if I'm doing that right and if I'm doing that intelligently, I'm overlapping that with my compassion for my community, both in local city and nationwide, you know, and hopefully internationally as well, that I'm not just prioritizing the people of my house and my family over other people. I'm just doing that first because that's just, if I got $10, I'm going to spend it on my family first rather than,
of course.
Yeah. Well, the internet definitely had a big play in that too. Just, I mean, we're talking going back to the 90s and especially the 2000s. Like, and again, there's the archetypes, especially in the 2000s of the Neptune and Aquarius, and even Uranus and Aquarius too, especially Uranus and Aquarius. And like that really, like, it used to be that where it was like small town, like, you know, you take care of your community first and then it builds. And that's maybe where they were successful in that way. Because, you know, if you think about like the nuclear family and like the cliches of like the 50s and stuff, like, and even going back further, but like nowadays we're so much more of like a world community, but we've gone, and that's the negatives of Aquarius. It's like you can have too much, if you're too focused on just the whole world, yeah, you're going to lose sight of immediately in front of you and the things that matter right here. And so, yeah, like that is one of the things that we need to watch for, because that's where we can get into like the whole idea of like a global community and like the whole idea of like globalism, and even like it's not necessarily communism, but just those thoughts of like, you know, we're all in the same field and everyone just has to sacrifice their own self and individuality for the greater good kind of thing. And like
the greater good.
Yes, the greater good.
The greater good.
And exactly, and that's
you're
100% right. I love that.
Power of many.
Yeah, and there again, it's two sides of a coin where it's like there's the positives of that, but there's also the negatives, which is like exactly what Mike said, like the greater good, like where people just blindly go, okay, I'm gonna sacrifice myself for the greater good, but then what does that accomplish you? And so it's like we have to find that balance. And so yeah, the boomer generation.
3 and 4.
The what?
The goods of the one outweigh the goods of the many.
Oh, is that Star Trek? Yes. And that's again very much
Spock at the end.
Yeah.
And I mean, and that's the difference of community is that like, you know, I mean, yeah, logically that makes sense that you're going to self-sacrifice for the community, but at the same time is the community isn't the community unless it sticks together for the one.
Yeah. And how big of a community are we talking about? Because now we're looking at like the whole world versus, you know, it's never been that way where like we have the whole world community. It's always been localized. I mean, you can talk about the size difference, whether we're talking about like community in the general sense or nations or whatever, but it's never been the whole world all trying to be on the same page.
Well, and you can't have a community without unity or communication. Like,
nice. Clever. I like that.
I mean, so it's like if people aren't communicating, they aren't in a community. And it's just like, they talk about all these demographics of people. It's like, but they don't organize along those demographics, you know? So they're not a community necessarily, you know? I mean, the gay community is more of a community because, yeah, they do things together. And that by definition is what makes them gay, you know? So of course they're a community, you know? But not everybody definition of what makes them a demographic is based upon an action or a verb, or even communicating with each other. So it's like not everything is a community, because not everybody actually agrees this with each other, and not everybody actually communicates with each other. So it's like, and it's just like, and that's the way the politicians have been using demographics, especially, you know, Democrats, to as a cudgel, you know, to be like, oh, well, I'm sticking up for, you know, this caricature of a person.
Yeah. Well, and maybe the positives of Aquarius will come out during Pluto and Aquarius, because as much as Aquarius is about the collective, it's finding your groups. I mean, it's more 11th house in Aquarius, but at least I'll just kind of bring that aspect in where it's like you find your tribes, basically, is what I'm trying to say. It's like the whole cliche of the 11th house, and like there might be some level of that where, yeah, like ultimately we're just going to have to do that because we're not all going to be on the same page no matter what. I mean, if we're talking like astrology wise, like there's at least 12 major viewpoints in the world, and obviously we're all individuals, but even just that, like there's the 12 signs, and we all might tap into certain parts of those 12 signs. But so maybe it is about then maybe the way to move forward is about just finding the communities that work for you and that you click with. And again, it's important to have the ability to find those communities, and that requires obviously the internet, because that's a big part of it, being able to reach people who are not necessarily local to you, and also like being able to have your interests. Like as much as like the whole boom and like the whole LGBT stuff has been happening in the past like decade, especially, it's like abstractly the value is that, and again, it's just so hyper focused on that one thing of like gender and sexuality. But it's, if we take a step back, it's just about being able to be free to quote be yourself. Again, very idealistic, but like, yeah, sure, be able to be yourself and express yourself, and then find people who are also that way. And there's a value in that. And so I think it's important to be able to do that in every aspect of life, not just our gender and sexuality. But like that's probably one of the things that maybe will help benefit building culture forward, because yeah, and it's not about entrenching yourself in a tribe. It's not about just being like, my tribe is the best. The way, you know, by a tribe I mean like the gay community or whatever
identity group that you're a part of.
Yeah. Exactly. And but it allows for that level of like, you know, I feel like I'm part of something, but also then it's not like it's you versus the rest. It can be like you exist there in your group, and then this group is over there with their beliefs, and this group is over here with their values and all the things that they want. And we can all, I mean, this is very idealistic, but we can all get along. Yeah. Like, but
that is the super idealistic Aquarius version of it. I feel it.
Me too. But I mean, it's all about finding the common ground, because it's like if you're a Venn diagram, it's like, well, pin together and unify and bond over the overlap points, not the things that you're not overlapping by, because otherwise you're trying to constort reality and trying to rearrange people and change people, and that's not respecting people. So you can be like, hey, we disagree on this, and that, but hey, you know what? I really enjoy talking to him about this and that or whatever. And you get to have your common ground. And it's like, even politically speaking, most of us agree on most of the subjects most of the time. So if we could just agree on whatever that 60 to 80% of issues is, you know, we'd realize that the other percent are important issues and that we need to advocate for. But like, let's solve the ones that we all agree on first. Like, let's just get those ones out of the way, you know, and then we'll be living a lot happier. And that goes also with like interpersonal life stuff. It's like there's going to always be stuff that we don't agree on. But it's like, hey, how do we have the core of this relationship, you know, actually mean something? Because it's like we can go have activities together. We can go do this or whatever. But it's like, how do we regulate as people with each other? How do we make each other better people? How do we support the other person, not just in their like three-dimensional ego journey of getting what they're trying to do done on this planet, but also expanding their soul and their consciousness at the same time, you know? And that requires sometimes helping them out when they're low, and sometimes being like, hey, I'll be here as soon as you need it, but I'm going to let you just figure this out for yourself for right now. And knowing how to balance that of, you know, being there for their ego, but also letting their soul expand.
And what you just described is literally Aries all the way to Pisces. It's so funny. It's like being there for your ego, and you go all the way around the zodiac, and it's like, and letting your soul expand. That's interesting. But It's
Well, I told you on the cusp. You didn't believe
yeah.
me.
You,
No, that's just his Mercury. He's actually going backwards. He's not even going all the way around.
yeah.
He's just going straight,
Good point. Good point. Okay. Yeah.
straight back.
Very good point, Mike. Very good point. That's funny. But it's funny how you say that because yeah, it's funny how people express their charts without even knowing, or not even being aware sometimes. But yeah, I mean, all really good points. Like I think we've really talked about this really clearly and stuff. If you guys have any more thoughts, by all means jump in. But unless we want to move forward,
Yes.
Bow now, bow now, bow now, bow now.
yeah.
I love you sweetly.
Oh, you're a funny guy, Mike. Goddamn.
So
Yeah.
Mars and Taurus.
Yes.
Can you
Mars
guys
and
hear
Taurus.
the piano?
What? Why did you interrupt me?
Yeah.
Where is going?
Yeah. No, that's awesome.
Man.
Yeah. What piano? What are you talking about?
Just checking.
Nope.
No, we
No, we
cannot hear your
can't.
piano.
Let's yeah, Mike, take it away, my friend. Sorry.
Wait, I want to hear the piano though.
You'll have to
I
play
can-
that play sad music when we
Very nice.
I was just seeing if my piano was coming through. But I can add that as an input later. But
you can
that
play
was-
us theme music.
So what's about this Taurus? Something Taurus?
Mars. and
Mars.
Taurus.
Oh, isn't
Mars.
Yeah.
Mars?
The planet Mars,
Mars.
where Elon Musk wants to go.
What about the Taurus bars? The Mars Taurus bars?
The Mars bars. So Mars has bars, I bet. I mean, I bet if Mars was in a battle rap, he'd do real good. I bet he would I bet he wouldn't be very nice, and people afterwards would be like, I can't believe Mars said that in his battle rap. It'd be like people complaining about Eminem in like the late 90s,
Oh.
early 2000s, you know?
See, I was thinking
I
of
mean,
the
that-
other bars, like a watering hole, because there's not a lot of water there. So if I got to Mars, I would want a watering hole where I could, get a drink at a bar.
Mars would be the dude in the watering hole getting drunk on whiskey and wanting to fight.
Mm-hmm.
That's what Mars does. So
Yes.
I understand
Mars-
astrology now. Thank you.
Yeah, good.
It's all coming
I just had
together.
to relate it to you. It's perfect.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I just
so-
need a.
Yeah, okay.
I was gonna start singing Elton John, but I think that would get us copyright claimed.
Yeah, you don't
Yeah.
want that.
Yeah.
Um,
No.
We don't want copyright claims.
I'll do that. I'll do that later. I'll do
Yeah,
that
perfect.
later. I think we can get away with a couple seconds.
we can do that in a break. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was good. So Mars was in Aries, and when Mars was in Aries, it was beneficial for everybody to just say what was on their mind. Like if they're angry, get it out. Like Mars in Aries is about expressing your energy as it comes in, even if it's a little bit whack, even if it's a little bit disruptive, even if it's a little bit shitty sometimes. Mars in Aries is about being yourself, not being afraid to be the warrior, not being afraid to be the only one standing against whatever forces are arrayed against you. So Mars has been in Aries. It moved into Taurus just recently, like last week. And now it's not beneficial to be like we just were, which is saying whatever you want to say whenever you want to say it. Now is the time for patience. So Mars is not super happy in Taurus. And that's a simple way to think about it, but Mars doesn't really want to be in a Venus ruled sign. Taurus is about patience, taking your time, building your values. And Mars in it, well, there's a couple different things that can happen. Mostly over the next 2 months while Mars is in Taurus, you want to pick your battles. You don't want to just go out guns blazing at every slight against your ego, for example. You want to wait until it's the right time, be patient, and then charge. It's like you've got a couple good swings during Mars and Taurus, but if you charge at everything, it's going to really fuck up your life. That's like how this transit is going to be. So for the next 2 months, like I'll relate it to how it's been going for myself. For the last for the Mars and Aries transit, I was fighting all the time with everybody. I was on Twitter just doing battle with what I thought was a lot of propaganda about current wars. And I was very outspoken about it, getting on many pages with pretty famous people and calling them bitches in like less, in nicer words, and that was what I was doing during Mars and Aries. But I'm not doing that anymore because Mars is in Taurus.
Yeah.
There's a lot of it's a lot more about controlling your reaction, waiting for the right time, and then moving forward towards it. The danger with Mars energy in Taurus is, what's the famous thing that happens when bulls see red? Like they lose control and they just fucking go for it, right? And Taurian energy, when it's angry, is actually more scary than almost any of the other signs. I would say it's one of the scariest signs in full anger because they have no control over themselves. It's just raw instinct, pushing forward, running at anything that's in their way. So the real danger during a Mars and Taurus transit is letting your anger get the best of you and letting basically your ego kind of drive the car. You should always have reins on your ego, directing it to do the things you want it to do. Ego should never be driving. When ego drives, shit gets broken, things get bad.
Mailboxes get hit.
Doing shit that you cannot take back, and that becomes part of your physical record on this earth. It's like Taurus, the things that happen during Taurus transits, they stay for a long time. So whether they're good or bad, they have longer term impact because you've basically made them solid, almost materialized these things into reality. Like during a Gemini transit, yeah, you can lose your fucking shit every once in a while. People will just be like, oh yeah,
and it passes.
Mike lost his shit. It's Gemini, it's fine. But if I lose my shit during this transit, can be really bad for reputation, can be really bad for a lot of things. So that's the big advice for everybody out there for Mars and Taurus. Be patient. If you have to fight, you can fight still, but make sure you're waiting for your right moment. And if it doesn't come, don't just push it forward. And I'll end with that. You can talk a little bit more about Mars and Taurus if you want to. That's what I've been thinking about with it, though.
No, everything you said, yes. And I just want the only thing I wanted to add is just the stubbornness of Mars or the stubbornness of Taurus combined with Mars. If like what you were saying, we can get on that track of just like the stubbornness of it, and like we just go with it. And so adding that level of stubbornness to the Mars energy can really, can have those detrimental effects, because it's like it's like you said, it really solidifies it in the Earth way. And so it's like, and the positives can also be, you can solidify positive things as well. But again, most people aren't, I'm being idealistic. Most people don't usually do the positive thing. And but that added level of stubbornness, as opposed to what you said with the Gemini energy, where you might say something and people are going to forget. It's just very it's very
ephemeral,
quick to
almost.
be. Yeah, exactly. Because again, that's a mutable sign versus a fixed sign. And like any fixed sign, you want to be careful with that energy, because it really solidifies it in a way. And like what you're saying, like people might hold on to that for a long time. Like they might see you say something or do something during that transit or that time, and instead of being able to let it go, they really will hold on to it. And so that there's, that's a really good warning and a lesson for people, because it's, we just want to be careful with those things. And that's where, like, again, the benefits of us knowing astrology allows us to know when it's the right time to do certain things, and when it's the right time to do other things, and when it's the right time to push forward, and when it's the right time to step back. And the other thing I just want to add, because I'll add the clip into this video, but recently there was a bull that got loose in Oregon. Exactly. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah, and like that, and it
was
went
right when it was right when Mars and Taurus moved, actually.
Wow,
was
that's even
crazy.
better. Yeah, even more of like, not better. I just mean even more of like a signal of, and that bull jumped over the fence and got to like the where the crowds are, and it hit like I think a woman. Yeah, exactly. Okay, yeah, I'll like I said, I'll include the clip for people to watch. Um, I'll pause and include the clip here. But anyways, exactly just to add to that. So it was just really, yeah, well said. And yeah, but again, be very wary of like Mars is how we use our energy or like how we direct our energy, and that can be many different ways. And so in this sense, be slow and steady with your energy. Like think of like a cow or a bull, like not a bull, maybe a cow in this sense where it's like very slow and steady and very much
So
just
so
go
I'm
ahead.
hearing,
Yeah.
I'm paraphrasing both of you guys. You got to be very tactful with how you're controlling your anger, because if your anger gets out, it might jump over a fence and attack a whole bunch of
Yep.
people.
Exactly.
Beautifully said. Yes, exactly. See, that's why we need
Very
you, Troy, because
dangerous.
yeah, exactly.
Okay, I was listening.
Can I bring up one more thing about Mars and
But
Taurus that's a
please.
historical thing? So the last time, it wasn't the last time, it might have been 2 times before, I'm not quite sure, but Mars moved into Taurus on January 6th, 2021. Right when the whatever you want to call it happened in the Capitol, right? And there was this image of this dude with these bull horns, right? And that was like the image that was what everybody was seeing on TV, you know, like that guy.
Yep.
And it was the most almost perfect representation of Mars and Taurus energy.
Yep.
Because it was like QAnon shaman, I think is what that guy's name is. And he's actually not a crazy person. And if you actually listen to him talk, there's a lot of things that he has to say that are interesting.
Yes.
But he looked like a crazy person a little bit because he had little bull horns, you know? And it happened right when Mars moved into Taurus. And all those people were taking that action when Mars moved into Taurus. And where are they now?
Prison?
Most of those people that were there are, except for the, you know, the FBI agents or whatever, most of those people are in jail, you know, like still. Some of them got held without charge for like a year or something like that before they even went to jail. It was like a pretty, like those actions in the heat of the moment sometimes will have long-term impacts on your life that you might not see in the moment that you're doing it because you feel like you're pushing forward your own values, you know? So I feel like January 6th was like almost encompassed that moving from Aries. So everybody was all fired up. And then it moved into Taurus and they were like, yeah, we're fired up. We're right here. And then all of it went to shit, you know? Like they didn't have a plan. There was nothing that they were actually trying to really do. They were just fucking basically sightseeing, you know, around the White House. And all of their lives got fucked up for many years from that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
that's like
at least on the personal decision level of a lot of those people. Yeah, very true.
Yeah, they made an interesting choice. I think I had the opportunity to go up there and I was like, no fucking way.
Yeah, it's a trap. Yeah,
It's
no.
a trap. Yeah, it was like Admiral Akbar, you know?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it was fucking
It's a
Alex
trap!
Jones in a tank, was in a blowhorn as people are going in, literally telling people it's a trap, don't go in.
Yeah. But it is very interesting how, and we're talking about how people will embody the little cultural shifts. Well, each planet will shift. And when we talk about the outer planets, that's only because they take longer to change signs. But each planet represents cultural shifts. Even planets like Mars, it's just smaller, shorter cultural shifts. But just the fact that it moved into Taurus, like Mike was saying, and then that guy became plastered with the bullhorns. It's just like clearly like there's, you know, call it whatever you want, synchronicity or whatever, but there's clearly something going on, and
embodying the zeitgeist.
I call it Astro
beautifully said. Yes, no, beautifully said. Yes, exactly. That's exactly it. And yeah, and again with the fixed signs, like being, and with Taurus, it was like these people got stuck and they were there. It was a very slow process. They were in prison and they're without trial for a long time. It's a very slow process. Whereas, like we were saying earlier, if it was in like a mutable sign, it might not have been, or it wouldn't have been that way in that way. So it's very telling. And that's, very, very good way to kind of simplify and clarify that archetype of the Mars and Taurus. So that's really great. Yeah. I dig it. But
Word,
yeah,
word.
Jump fences, don't push past barricades. You know,
I mean, and unless you
don't
want to
try to
accept the
climb through a
consequences.
window that's,
Yeah.
you know, like with broken glass, like a very small window. That's not a
Yeah.
good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
But,
bull in Oregon was probably taken, behind the field and shot afterwards. So, there's always consequences
mhm.
to breaking free,
Yeah.
especially during Taurus season.
Yeah.
Well, they
Mars
said
Yeah.
he
and
was
Taurus season.
retired. He was probably put to a farm, and then they'll let him sit there for about a year, and then until the media stops. But yeah,
I mean, yeah,
but that's
but
farming.
again,
That's
but
ranching.
it pushes that archetype, and it shows that archetype very well. So like it's funny how, yeah, I think it was last time Mars was in Taurus, there might have been another thing that happened in between it. It's every 2 years, right? So I guess there
Yeah.
must but the January 6th stuff was just a very good representation of that. And then on a smaller level, this bull jumping out of the fucking pen is another way of trying to explain it too. So it's just, yeah, I agree with what Mike said. Like I think he nailed it better than I probably could. And so I want to emphasize that, yeah, well said. And yeah, it's again just it's taking a step back. Whereas like, yeah, like Mars and Aries, take a step forward and butt heads and do your thing. But then obviously with Mars and Taurus, take a step back and try to just be more methodical and slow about using that Martian energy. And yeah.
Don't be like the Martians in Mars Attacks, where you come in and like, we come in peace, and then just start, killing everybody.
That movie, I gotta rewatch it. That's a great
I
fucking
have
movie.
not
Yeah.
watched Mars Attacks in a long time.
Yeah,
What did they do?
yeah.
What
We
was their
come in
voice thing
peace.
that they did? They were like yank
Oh,
yank brut,
yeah.
ack, ack, or something.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's like
Something like that.
yeah, exactly.
That show was funny, man. I remember
It
watching
was.
it back in the day. It was a good show.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
I want to watch it again now. We should all watch
Mhm.
it and then talk about Mars Attacks.
Fuck yeah.
When Mars moves into Leo or something. Who knows? We'll figure it out.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
okay. At this point, you guys know, because you guys actually know the stars, so you guys have to tell me like what the themes are, and then therefore that we can watch movies based upon each like transition as we go with the shows. Or
I dig it.
Well, Moon's about to move into Scorpio, so horror movies is pretty good next couple days.
Yeah.
I personally love horror movies, and
I hate
my
them.
wife hates them, so I have to watch them like really late at night, like after she's gone to bed. And
So you have to watch them
I'd
alone
rather
in the
she was
dark,
there.
just like you
I'd
would
rather
want
she
to.
was there. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. So you could it kind of sucks watching horror movies by yourself
Yeah.
at like 2 a.m. in the morning. Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't want to like pay a hooker to like come in and watch The Ring with me. It seems like excessive, and my wife wouldn't like it, so I don't
Probably
want to do
not.
that.
Yeah. Probably not. Yeah.
Well,
That's
they
funny.
don't-
I mean,
they don't
I wouldn't have sex with her. I want to be clear. I was just saying that I would, that's a person for hire, and you can conceivably have them do other things, like
that's
an
actually
escort or
something
whatever.
like 30 to
You can
40
have them watch The
percent.
Ring with you, so you're
Yeah.
not scared when she
30%.
crawls out of the TV.
Yeah.
I've heard that like 30 to 40% of their stuff is that they do is like non-sexual, just hanging out, and
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, like
I can see
there's
that.
there's
Go clean my room. No, just kidding.
Oh, goddamn.
Just kidding.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
well, there's a lot of people in our society that are deprived of their stuff, and are hurt in a lot of ways and don't know how to connect with people.
Yeah. But there's cuddle people. You can hire people to cuddle with you, and that's all they do. So I get it. There's all sorts of stuff like that.
Yeah,
Not
except
that I would know.
I'm pretty sure all of those businesses have essentially gone out of business because of the too many issues have come up where they were using the service as like people were abusing the people coming over, or they were abusing the service as a way to solicit themselves. So it ended up just being sexually escalating in one way or another, too often. As why I've heard from several of those businesses shutting down.
Well, that makes sense.
Poor Huggy Bear.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the whole thing is that like, you have to have boundaries, and if you good people respect boundaries, so they make them so that you basically never have to say them. But people who are going to abuse your boundaries, they're they're what they're for, you know? It's like it's the same reason you have locks in your house and all that other stuff. It's just you have to have basic boundaries on stuff, you know?
Yes,
Like someone can
that's
always
true.
just break your car window or break your face in, you know, but it's at the same time as like you got to communicate your boundaries or at least let them, know that it's at least socially the norm that these are acceptable boundaries.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, yeah. I mean, and boundaries again is from my understanding, the Cancer Capricorn or axis. But we can maybe talk about that one next week as far as or in 2 weeks as far as the what those things represent. But I think yeah,
We'll
all
see where the
people have
moon
to.
is.
Yeah, exactly. But all people have to have boundaries. Yeah, yeah. But again, like yeah, all people have to have boundaries, and it's shown through those archetypes. But I mean, yeah, it's the same reason why we lock our doors, or we have a fence in our yard, or we want to put a wall on the southern border, or whatever. There's different varied levels of boundaries, and there's obviously the emotional boundaries and the mental boundaries as well as not just the physical ones. And yeah, you're right, Troy. It's about being able to be clear about those boundaries, because then if you're not clear about your boundaries and then people cross them, then it's harder because like if someone doesn't know, then how are they supposed to know? But like if you're very clear about your boundaries and then someone crosses them, then you have a right to put your foot
Yeah.
down and quote unquote
Well,
tap
it's
into
like,
your Mars and fight.
I mean,
Yep.
classic example is just, if you expect someone to take their shoes off at the front door, but you don't say it, and then you don't, and they've been walking around for an hour in your house, and then you get all pissed about it, well, then you're an asshole, you know? But if you like communicated it to them and then, they got all pissed off because they wouldn't take their shoes off, it's just like it's clear, but you have to like you have to know yourself and your expectations and then not put them on other people,
Yeah.
which is uh yeah, but I mean, in the whole thing with relationships, it's like essentially you have, as I see it, you when you're coming together for a relationship, on whatever relationship it is, like a business relationship, it's going to be more transactional, but it's like it's still saying, hey, we have needs that need to get met, and if you are going to be oblivious to the needs of my business, then I'm not going to stop doing business with you, and it goes the same thing with relationships. It's like, because you have your positive needs and you have your negative needs. It's saying, these are the things I need from other people I can't do for myself. And then you also have your negative needs these are what I do not want from other people, which are your boundaries, you know?
Excuse me.
Bless you.
Mm.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. No, I get it, Troy. It's like, yeah, it ultimately is the individual's responsibility though, because yeah. And like I think again, going back all the way to Libra, sometimes Libra can just be not Libra suns. I'm not trying like speaking for myself, I'm a Libra moon. Like I used to have where I would just assume that people knew what I wanted and my boundaries and stuff. And like, and again, that's very much Libra moon because the moon is like, it's not necessarily like the best expression in terms of like, it's not like our higher self in that way, but it's there was a level of like I just assumed that, or I assumed, oh, people need to know my boundaries because why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they be able to put themselves in my shoes? But again,
Yep.
it's like no, you have to take responsibility and use the opposite sign Aries to be like, this is my boundaries, this is my needs, this is what I want, and then yeah. So I would encourage all Libra moons to learn how to express your boundaries very clearly. That's yeah. But again, go ahead.
I would say when I was younger, I had less clear boundaries. Um, because I didn't really know what they were yet, Like
Yeah.
you don't always know your boundaries sometimes until it's triggered, right? Like,
yep.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as much as we might all pretend that we never get triggered, every single one of us on this earth gets triggered. Some people just it's like their job, Like that's the problem. There's some people that get triggered like they're getting paid for it, And there's other people that just get triggered
Yes.
because
Oh yeah.
shit happens, and it pushes your boundaries and you get upset. But the more that you kind of learn about yourself, I think this is like a wisdom thing. Like as you learn about yourself, you learn how you want to be treated, how to like actually set boundaries for other people. And I think it just gets easier with time. Like I think older people generally have clearer boundaries. younger people usually have more diffuse boundaries. And it's like as people are kind of going through their teen years and 20s, that's when people are really learning what their boundaries are, you know, like what doesn't make them feel good. So how are you going to actually express your boundary when you're younger, when you don't really know what it is, you know? You only know what it is because there's been like some boundary violation, right, from somebody around you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of how you learn it, you know? Like I don't think like we're born knowing them. And our boundaries can definitely change over the course of time. But I think that's why you have 20-year-olds that are the most like woke patrol people, because I mean, not to be too fine a point on it, but when you're in your 20s, you kind of think you know everything when you don't know shit, you know? In your 30s, you start like knowing more shit. You lose a little bit of that ego that you had during your 20s. And in your 40s, you stop giving a fuck, I think, a little bit. And 50s, and you continue on. I think that there's a real shift that happens just with age. And I think that makes sense because boundaries are related directly to Saturn, and Saturn is like related to wisdom and age. Um,
Well, I hear what
because
you're saying. Oh, sorry.
yeah,
Oh,
go ahead.
I just I think that a lot of that is more of like, at least as far as the I agree with a lot of what you're saying. It's just as far as that goes along with current ages, along our current culture, I think. Because we have we have a big lack of role models to be able to know how to do a lot of these things. So a lot of us have to figure it out. So obviously by the time we get older, we have more boundaries. And I think it's the thing is that it actually goes the other way around. Because it's the thing is that we have more needs, I think, when we're younger, because that's just how the it interacts with the world. So both positive and negative needs. I need these things from other people for my growth, but I also don't need these experiences because they're going to hinder my growth too. And you put boundaries around your negative needs, you know? And so there's a lot of people that have developed excess negative needs because of their own mental health and the way they see the world, you know?
Hmm.
And uh and if they actually learned how to communicate and have respectful boundaries on those, they'd actually have more respect for themselves at the same time and take a lot more autonomy into their worldview. But the problem with a lot of the world right now is it's the whole oppressor versus oppressed thing. Is if you're oppressing me, I can't put up boundaries, and my boundaries are meaningless because you're oppressing me, you know? And that's the problem with the worldview allows, or I should say, it disincentivizes and literally will block certain people from implementing certain tools into their life to get more autonomy and to allow these energies into their life.
I
Yeah.
can see
And
that.
Yeah.
and so I think it's a cultural thing. So a lot of this is like the more that we understand it, the more that we can actually be an example to people. And that's not by being like a model or an Instagram thing, but it's like it's be the change you want to see in the world. It's literally just being the best version of yourself. And you can't necessarily be an example to everybody, but you can be an example to people in your life, you know, and reverberate from there, which is like coming back to culture.
Yeah. And I think that's a good lesson for people, anyone to take on, because yeah, it's we're ultimately the start of any change we want to make. I mean, people externalize their feelings of wanting to change the world and make the world better, but they
Yeah.
always externalize it so much. And it's like it really is, it starts with how you behave and how you are inside your own head and your own heart, if you want to call it that or whatever. And like it's a lot easier to externalize our feelings than to feel our feelings. And so I think, yeah, I mean, yeah, that's really good advice for people, Troy. Yeah. And
I just want to say that I personally don't want to be the best version of myself. Um, the best version of myself is it's too rigid, you know? I don't want to be that person that's like rigid and stuck in like these roles of what I think is good. I'd rather be the rawest version of myself than the best version of myself, because the rawest version of myself is the most likely to lead to my own growth, you know?
Very
If
well
you're
put.
constantly putting kind of a straitjacket on yourself, um, to be good, because good is a very like it is a very nebulous
Objective.
concept, you know? It's
Very
what?
moralistic.
It's
Well,
very
it's a lot of the
moralistic.
time it's ego based because, and it's a lot of the time what's good for me is good for my survival, and that's usually goes synonymous with a lot of the way, and then it gets extrapolated for a lot of more people's morality is that, oh well, what's good for the majority of people, and then it becomes into different styles of morality theory of consequentialism or utilitarianism, all that kinds of stuff.
You
Yeah, but I definitely hear what Mike's saying in terms of there's it definitely not being about being good, because you're right, that definitely like our society's definition of good, or whatever you want to call it, like other people's definition of good, definitely puts a straitjacket on us. And I think, it's like you're not going to be able, like, and some people live their life that way, and that's fine. Like, I'm not like, some people, that's what they want, and that's
know,
whatever, like that's their choice. But like I agree with Mike in the sense that, like, you do have to test yourself and push yourself in some ways, and that doesn't mean you're always going to be your best self in that way. Like, you do have to kind of push, and and obviously at some level of core you have to have, I mean, it doesn't mean being like a psychopath. It just means, or like anything like that. Not, yeah, and I'm not saying that's what you're saying, Mike. It just means like because then you could take it to the ultimate extreme and just not give two fucks about anyone except,
oh,
and that,
for sure,
yeah,
for sure.
yeah. But again, you're it's gonna trigger that growth in yourself, and that is so much more valuable, especially, and that's the whole, I mean, in my like personal beliefs about life, that's the whole purpose, is we're here to grow and become better, is the wrong word, but just more of ourselves, and that does require putting ourselves into situations, or pushing on things and pushing on ourselves and allowing others to push back on ourselves. And again, not just wearing that straight, like that metaphor of the straight jacket with being the good. That's a very good metaphor, because it really explains, like, we can just, and that will then lock down parts of ourselves that we can't then fully express and stuff, and then
Wait,
ultimately can.
I don't think I'm sorry, can I interrupt for just a second? Um, I don't think if you're always trying to be good, you're ever really going to be able to integrate your shadow. And I feel like the only way that you can integrate shadow is by allowing what's unconscious to come to the surface and be in you. The only way that you can integrate shadow is you allow your subconscious and unconscious to become conscious. And it usually happens through like not ideal situations. And you see this part of yourself that you otherwise wouldn't be able to see, especially if you're locked into like a view of how you're supposed to be, you know? Like if you're thinking of yourself as you're supposed to be, whenever anything negative comes up, you'll try to push that down, which is the absolute wrong thing to do when you're trying to integrate shadow, right?
Very well put.
Your shit comes up, you see it, you accept that that's part of yourself, you recognize you have a share in the common evil, so to speak, you know? We've all got a share in evil incorporated, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Each of us has it.
Oh yeah.
And
100%.
so there's this important part about integrating those parts of yourself that you have called evil, you know, that you have decided was not you, but it's still you. So that's what integrating shadow is. It's like the parts of you that you've pushed down and said, this isn't me. It's still you. It comes up, you hug it, you work it out, you hug it maybe for money, you know, like we were talking about earlier. Maybe you hang out with your the hug master for your shadow material, and you say, just give me a couple little special powers if I hug it out with you. And your shadow's like, yeah, that's fine. Because the reality is, whenever we integrate those negative parts of ourselves, we become more of ourselves, and we become a more mature, more realized self.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important to remember.
I
That's
mean, and some would
yes.
call that good or even best.
Yes.
Anyway, just to poke fun. But I agree with what you're saying. It's a huge thing about the ego and the way that we define words and the way that we approach this. And a lot of the people approach spirituality as a very escapism, you
Yeah,
know?
that's true.
Which it's just, which like, I mean, don't get me wrong. Escapism in proportionality is actually very healthy, you know, but you have to recognize that it's like, oh, I need a break from life. I need a break from this. I'm going to go escape for a second and then go get back to my shit. But if you're using it as like your all time tool for everything, you know, and you're overusing it, it's just you're overusing it.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. I just real quick, I mean, this is the ultimately like the whole Jordan Peterson thing about we all have a monster in our subconscious and our unconscious. And
The
instead of
dragon or whatever.
yeah, either the dragon, the monster. I mean, you can call it whatever you want, different cultures and religions or whatever, but it's this idea of like we have that in us and we all do, and we can either let it overpower us, which is the lessons of like the Scorpio archetype in a lot of ways, which
Yeah.
I think is what you're alluding to. And it's yeah, like you can either ignore it and it's going to come out and bite you and you're not going to be able in control of it, or over time we're slowly letting these things out and letting the monsters or demons or whatever you want to call it out of your subconscious, your closet, and
Yep.
becoming you then can slowly over time become in control of them. I mean, obviously it's not like a one night thing overnight, like you magically have all control, but it's a long process. But you're better off doing that. At least that's what Peterson says. And again, that's what you're saying too, Mike. It's like you're better off doing that because that's where like it's going to be there and it's going to come out and lash out in ways that you can't control, and it might bite you or it might bite someone else, and then you like, you know, the person is like surprised by you or like, oh my god, how can you be that way? It's like
Well,
like
yeah,
yeah,
it comes back to like classic thing. It's just like that which you don't know about yourself has the most amount of control over you.
yeah,
Yeah.
So all you have to do to really solve almost all of these issues is just be aware of them. And if you're aware of them and just maintain awareness and operate in a way that's for your best good while maintaining awareness of all your parts and recognizing when there's like, oh, I have another blind spot that I need to open up to and accept, you know, and why am I not accepting that part of myself and that blind spot, you
yeah,
know? And it usually comes down to various survival mechanisms and such like that,
yeah,
Yeah.
that we've come up with because
Yeah.
That gets imprinted early usually.
yeah,
yeah, and there's strategies that we've learned, so we need to then change our context, our culture, our relationships around us to actively build those things in how we engage with them and we engage ourselves with those others, you know, so that we're maintaining our needs and our boundaries, you know, and properly like respecting our own journey and not letting things fall in the cracks. Because like part of the whole thing about being especially in close relationships is people can see things, you know, because like we haven't always had mirrors as humans, you know, so we relied on other people to tell us how we look and to, you know, because we didn't have a sense of self in the same way because we needed other people and other people's reaction to understand how we were. So
oh yeah, no, and again that goes
down
back to the Libra. It's like that's what in a way the Libra archetype says, like other people are a way of to mirror ourselves in a way, and like how we both treat other people and how they treat us. It's like it's being aware of that and like being like, yeah, no man is an island. You have to be in a world full of other people. And so that's why Libra comes right before Scorpio, because it's like it provides that mirror for us, and then that mirror allows us to see the shit, the next sign Scorpio, in ourselves.
Yep.
And so the shit, I mean, you know what I mean, what we're talking about.
Oh,
And
I
so
do. I absolutely do know what you
yeah,
mean.
yeah.
I am not it's not an unknown for me. I see the shit in myself. I created a shit posting group, you know, that's about astrology. I've created 3, I think, and
Mhm.
most of them have gone to shit because of learning about my shadow as I was going through it, you know. But I
Yeah,
feel like I'm in a good place right now.
good.
We're moving forward.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. No, and yeah,
Yeah.
ASO is a great group. For everyone out there who isn't a part of ASO watching this, look up the Facebook group Astrology Shitposting Only, because it is a great group. So join it, join us. So there's a plug for you, Mike. There you go.
Thank you. That's all I really wanted. That was my whole goal. No, I'm just kidding.
Nick's just here plugging and hugging.
I know. Plug and hug. Well, here, let's plug Troy too.
Hug.
Yeah,
Plug and
Troy,
hug.
plug and hug. And
I already got my little thing right down here. See?
okay, yeah. Look up his or
You've
over
got
there.
your
Look up
little
his
thing right down where?
yeah.
Troy Keys
I'm just
Applying
kidding.
Principles.
Yeah, on YouTube.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That was a dick
I'm on
joke, and I
YouTube.
shouldn't have said
I'm gonna
that.
get
It
some
was.
more stuff.
You got your
going
little
there
thing down
soon.
there. Well, boys, I mean, do we want to go into explaining it? We've been talking for a
I
good.
think we've done good.
Yeah.
We've done good
Yeah.
tonight. I
Let's,
feel like this is a good stopping point.
I think
Let's
we
wrap it
really
up
need
then.
to talk about how we can bring world peace and get everybody on the planet to stop fighting, to stop going on their individual karmic journeys and start doing nothing so that I can feel better about myself.
Perfect. Well, like, I'll bring up a light topic to finish. Let's talk about Israel Palestine. No, just kidding. Just kidding. Yeah.
It's Mars and Taurus. I'm not allowed to talk about that anymore.
Yeah.
I think for a little while,
Respect.
Well,
yeah.
Oh God, it hurts. It hurts to even think about it.
Oh, don't take
Done.
yourself hostage.
Oh, that's funny. Oh. Not cool, Troy. Not cool. No.
I will not take myself hostage.
It's just like certain people. Okay, well, let's wrap it up, boys.
Wait,
go
your
ahead.
screen froze. Did you make a gesture or something?
What?
No, I didn't. Everything's good.
No. Everything. Yeah. Well, boys, it's been a pleasure. I'm just.
Been great.
Let's wrap it up for the edit. It's been great and great conversations as always. Again, Troy, Mike, you can find them at Applying Principles on YouTube for Troy, and the Astrology Shitposting Only on Facebook, and then ASO Reacts on YouTube for Mike. And my name is
Also,
Nick.
Mutual Reception Astrology, if you could throw that out. Yeah,
Absolutely.
Which is my meme page.
Absolutely. Everyone go there as well. And I'm Nick, and Astrology Explained on YouTube. And again, boys, it's been a pleasure as always. And we'll talk to you next time, everyone.